Hi everyone, welcome to this panel today. So today's panel, we're actually going to be going into our liquid workforce and how that really needs to start to marry together seamlessly with our automation, human agents, really to drive that experience that we're having in this really new and disruptive world. So all of us are kind of on this journey at the moment, on this path to become these omni agents who can do everything we need. And this panel of experts you see in front of you will actually talk to us on their journey throughout the year around this way of digital transformation, how AI and humans really start to work hand in hand and complement each other, and really start to create this kind of future-proof, disruption-proof contact center. And this is really part of the way we need to kind of incorporate the need for our organizations to change and shift how we are with our technology stacks, with the kind of new learnings and that transformation, so that it really aligns with what customers are doing today, what their expectations on us as organizations are, as well as also fully understanding kind of the services that we need to provide and how we can use those in turn. So we really need to start learning how do we stop separating people from automation. I think it's really crucial that we've seen this in many times again, that people and businesses start to think that automation is really about replacing people, whereas they're about actually supporting and assisting people in everything they do. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today who are going to talk us through some of that journey. I'll throw first to Cameron. Cameron, if you could give a quick spiel on who you are and what you do.
Sure. Good day, everyone. Nice to be with you. My name's Cam Adams. I'm the Solution Consulting Director for NICE, covering Australia and New Zealand. We provide CX1 in Australia, which is the leading cloud contact center platform.
Excellent. Slade, I'm going to follow to you now, if you could give us a quick intro.
Thanks, Michael. So Slade Sherman from iSelect. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at iSelect and look after a number of teams around technology, product design, as well as data and commercial team as well. So pretty broad ranging, but the last 12 months have definitely been an interesting 12 months for our business, and looking forward to sharing some more information.
Rich, let's start with yourself now.
Thanks so much.
A little bit of a spiel.
Yeah, so Rich Rose, great to meet everybody virtually. Hi, I'm the Director of Customer Service at Nine, and my team runs the contact centre for Nine, which looks after the publishing side of the business. So, you know, some of the mastheads that people will know, Australian Financial Review, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age are our three biggest ones, and my guys deal with all of the inquiries related to those wonderful mastheads.
Last but not least, Richard.
Thanks, Michael. I'm the Chief Customer Experience Officer at Business Australia. So we're more of a B2B than a B2C organisation. Our role effectively is to try and work with other businesses to help them get better at being in business, as it were. So that's us.
Beautiful. And Rich, I might let you start with our first one. You know, it's obviously been such an amazing couple of, almost 18 months now of disruption and change and everything that's been going through. If you think back over the last year that we've been kind of going through, what's that journey been like for yourself and your contact center?
I've got a few more grey hairs now than I did 12 months ago. I think it's probably fair to say. I think if somebody had said to me 12 months ago, this is what you're going to go through, I probably would have opted out, I think. But having now been through it, it's been an incredible journey. And, you know, for us, particularly in the contact center, just like everybody else, we had one major event, which was COVID. But we also had a separate event which caused our inbound volumes to increase 4- or 5-fold. And of course, that sod's law coincided with the COVID commencement, where we needed to get everybody working from home. So it really was kind of the perfect storm. And we needed to act so quickly that you didn't have time to really think about decisions. And so we made decisions very rapidly. Obviously, the #1 priority was the safety and welfare of our people. So getting them working from home was the #1 priority. And, you know, thankfully with the CX1 solution, as long as you've got a laptop and an internet connection, you can kind of work anywhere. So it was pretty seamless for us getting our guys working from home. The biggest issue then was just making sure that their engagement levels don't drop, because we've made great strides in increasing those engagement levels. And it presents its own set of challenges. Thankfully, video, just like we're doing now, is an absolute godsend, because I think if it was just a phone call, it would be quite challenging. So we kind of got through that major hump in terms of volume probably by August, I would say. And then things started to settle down again. But obviously, whenever there was a COVID peak that led to a border closure, that would have an impact on our volumes. But thankfully, we've just been able to keep everything relatively on the straight and narrow. And a lot of that, without question, is down to the stability of the platform that we've been able to use. So a very challenging 12 months, but I can honestly say the most rewarding of my career. And I've spent more years than I care to mention in and around contact centers. You know, whilst the volumes, the absolute volumes that my guys deal with are not the biggest that I've dealt with in terms of the percentage increase that we had to deal with, I've never experienced anything like it. So it's been fun, entertaining, and thankfully with a platform that has been really quite wonderful for us.
Excellent. I think we'll talk a little bit more about some of that journey as we go through the panel. Talking about volume increases on that journey for the year, I can't imagine, Slade, it must have been a massive year for iSelect. Like with you guys, you know, obviously comparison and things like insurances and all sorts of things, everyone's battened down the hatches a little bit with the economy. You guys must have been kind of gone through the ringer through the year on this one, right?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit too speed. If you were going to pick a time for the COVID disaster, if you like, to hit, you couldn't pick a worse time than March, because that's, you know, our biggest vertical is health insurance. And so mid-March is the period where we're usually the busiest in the year around the health insurance rate rise. So with COVID landing at that time, nobody was looking at health insurance. Everybody was looking at, you know, what might occur. So yeah, initially there was a significant kind of drop off in demand, which was very stressful at the time, but recovered that through the year because they did a health rate rise later in the year. And probably, you know, the story would echo a lot of what Rich had been through, in that, you know, prior to March, we'd never operated other than in a call center environment. COVID meant that we were all forced to move very quickly to that work from home. And that's resulted in some really good opportunities. Like today, we now recruit for agents anywhere in Australia, as opposed to just in the southeast corridor of Melbourne. So that means that you've got a much better, broader you know, talent set to go after. And so that's been really positive. And then, yeah, look, as you say, there are some of the comparison areas where you just had significant increases in demand. And, you know, we saw a lot of the benefits of that, particularly after, I'd say, March, April, May was really, really stressful. But once we sort of moved into this financial year, much better trading environment, always with nerves as you're leaning into what's coming next. But like Richard said, a very rewarding period given what we went through.
And through that period, how did you find that it was best to sort of kind of support your agents? You know, that disruption hit you, it came out of the field, you're all geared up for one thing, having to pivot to something else. What are some of the tips that you kind of have for people when they go through that disruption in a contact center environment?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, I think I mean, Rich again had mentioned video, and the idea of just video engagement and regular engagement between team leaders and agents within the team. We really sort of focused in on over communicating, if anything, for that work from home environment. We relied heavily on a lot of our data and analytics reporting, which has always been a strength of iSelect, but really became more important with everybody working from home to monitor things like performance levels and making sure that from an engagement perspective, we were not just looking at performance, but looking at the mental health and the well-being of everybody within the teams. And, you know, some of the environmental things, you know, when you have people working from home, whether it's being an environment in the shared home or small kids, there's a whole set of new requirements there, not just for the consultant themselves, but, you know, business risk. So from a compliance perspective, are we doing the right thing? And ensuring that you had additional, just clarity as to what those environments required. But certainly our people and culture team worked overtime and really are still doing it. You know, this week in Victoria, we had more news about one case, and that then results in a whole set of communications and change to the way we're doing things really rapidly. So people and culture definitely plays a massive role there.
Yes, that was an interesting night the other night with all those announcements, especially for myself. It's actually my local shops are all the exposure sites. So it's quickly like, did we go on those days? But yes, that kind of rapidness of communicating, letting everyone else know in the office what's going on. I can imagine that kind of style of empathy and that space and the change also was quite important for you, Richard, in terms of the Business Australia. Like, you're kind of trying to also manage this disruption about contact centers, setting them up for success, but you're also dealing with businesses who are probably going through some of the toughest times they've been through as well. How did you help support your agents through that sort of level of disruption too?
Yeah, it's a really good point in that business owners and business managers, I mean ourselves included, but certainly SME owners and managers have faced challenges they certainly never faced thus far in their careers, as have we all, and hopefully won't face again. And it led to, I mean, 4 and 5 times the volume increases in terms of intraday calls through, certainly through inbound call centres, as you know, business owners were reaching out for advice on things they'd never had to face before. So, I mean, at the same time, we were kind of learning the response to a lot of that, and managing, you know, a range of different government announcements at, you know, local, state and federal level. That meant we were constantly having to update our own understanding and knowledge throughout the course of that process as well. It was very different in terms of how we helped people through the process, inbound versus outbound as well. So outbound, firstly, we were lucky in that most of our systems are cloud and soft. So the transition to home-based working, technically speaking, was actually fairly simple, in inverted commas. I think that managing the process outbound became about trying to help people understand that they shouldn't be trying to match the way they worked in the office in a different environment, and that it was we didn't expect them to, and neither should they try to work in exactly the same formats and styles and operating procedures from home as they were doing from the office, because things were different. They're in a different environment. I think to your point, Michael, around increases in volumes, and an inbound perspective, it was hang on for the ride. Because, you know, when you're taking 5 times as many calls intraday, you're doing whatever you can to survive. And it really was about, you know, what could we do to help people through that process? And it was, for a good 2 or 3 months, it was literally, let's just try and hang in there.
What are some of the things that you started to then introduce to help support that and maintain it going forward? Like, what's some of the lessons you've learned from that experience? We
repurposed people as quickly as we could to kind of provide additional volumes. We looked at different triage systems to try and manage queries in different formats. We set up different we set up different kind of decision tree related front ends. So I think we found quite quickly that people were looking for information as well as they were seeking to get answers, if that makes sense. So the digital democratization of trying to solve things for yourself, I think, exacerbated quite quickly. Some of that, in the case of small business people, was actually probably because they had a bit more time on their hands intraday because they weren't trading. So, you know, if you're a cafe owner and your cafe is not open, funny enough, you have a bit more time to try and actually find some of that information for yourself in a time of the day when maybe you wouldn't normally have that time available to you because you'd be on your feet, you know, serving your customers. So we found that, you know, platforming more self-help information and then having an escalation point reduced call volumes and probably helped people feel that they were trying to help themselves. And there was a period there where, I mean, none of us really knew what was going on. So people were trying to get out and do the best to find their own solutions as well. So, you know, facilitating that more, not through, you know, high expense use of technology, but, you know, really just providing more information in a format that people could find for themselves. We found that very useful.
Yeah, like I think going back into the past, the last project Rich and I worked on ages ago was around digital commerce. And it was really, you nailed it right there. The businesses and their ability to have time during the day to self-solve, it doesn't really exist when you're running your own company. And I had a retail business myself for a couple of years, and I kind of tested that time of getting to it and just wanting to be in charge of it and how you actually provide those services. It's quite a fascinating transformation. I might actually throw it to Cam and Rich. I'm like, you kind of mentioned it before, Rich, that you guys went on this massive journey through this with Nine, looking at the CX1 platform. Can you tell me more about that? Kind of what was some of the highlights, you know, what some of the outcomes and that journey, trying to do a transformation in the middle of a pandemic is sure to be fun.
Yeah, yeah, it was. But prior to the pandemic, we always had this view that we wanted a contact center technology solution that would give us the flexibility to recruit anywhere over time, potentially. And I think one of the other guys said that, you know, it opens up a completely different recruitment market, rather than historically we've been based in Piermont in Sydney, one of the best views on the planet, I think, looking out over these $10 million yachts. But it means that we have a relatively narrow workforce that we can tap into. So we always said we love the idea of cloud, because it means, as I said before, if you've got an internet connection and a laptop, in principle, you could work from anywhere. Little did we know, obviously, that our hand was going to be forced so quickly because of the pandemic. So I think probably the biggest great thing that's come out for us in 2020 is the proof that that SaaS model genuinely works, because we tested it to the max, as I'm sure many organizations will have done. So that's really great. And it's fundamentally changed our view of how we run the Nine contact center now moving forward. So Nine, when Fairfax merged with Nine, the plan was always to bring that new community all together into one location. What we're looking at now is, rather than us needing 50, 60, 70 seats, we actually probably only need about 15, because we're going to introduce a hybrid model where the bulk of the time our people work from home, but once every 10 days or so, they'll be with their team in the office. So that really helps from an engagement perspective. But boy, does it have a benefit in terms of commercial property costs, because Sydney's expensive, as is Melbourne. So that's been really great for us to do that. I think the other thing that we've proven is, with an offering like CX1, where there's almost like a pick and mix option. You could go for the full bells and whistles on day one. We didn't do that. And that was pretty much by design, because I think you want to get the fundamentals right and then you add layers onto it. And even though, as with the other guys, our volumes have been off the charts in 2020, we have been able to add extra layers to it. So we've just introduced post-call surveys at the back of it. And again, if you'd said to me back when the pandemic started that we'd actually be looking to build on the offering, I just would have laughed. But the stability that we've had in the platform has been just so good that quality of service has not been an issue. And it's enabled us to look at how we can scale up our offering. And that obviously creates the opportunity to deliver better customer and people experiences. Yeah, so I hope that goes some way to answer the question.
From your side of the world, Cam, because obviously you would have been working with them on this, how do you find it easier to deal with it, that kind of try to build up, but what's kind of that relationship that you need to be able to pivot that quickly into a cloud environment?
Yeah, look, I think I think Nine faced a rate of change that even was a step above that everyone else faced over the last, 12, 18 months, the pandemic on top of all that other stuff that Rich was talking about. And I think, what we found working with Nine and working with a lot of our other customers was that, we needed to collaborate to be able to, deliver adaptation to that change in a really agile way. And so a lot of what we've been doing over the last 12 months with Nine, with others, has been about, rolling with the punches and really, making rapid changes within the platform to accommodate increased call volumes, to redesign call flows, to be able to, change the technology that delivers voice to agents to enable them to work from home. These sorts of adaptive changes, and we've been able to do them very, very quickly, and that's been great. But I think what this has shown us and shown Nine and probably many other organizations is the speed limits we thought were there are probably not really there. We can actually all move a lot faster than we thought. What I'm excited to see as we move into this year, and Rich hinted at it, is we can turn that same level of kind of adaptability and responsiveness and agility to adding more value to the people who work in the contact center and the people that they serve, through things like listening to them more effectively with feedback management, improving the way that agents interact with customers by giving them better, more relevant information in the moment. And so, great to see that step change of pace. And I think that that's just going to keep going, that fast adaptation.
That true agile dream.
Yeah, indeed.
If I can just add to that, because I did miss one really important point, which the beauty of that kind of SaaS-based platform is the ability to very rapidly scale up and scale down. Because if you've gone for a more traditional on-prem solution and you want to get another 50 agents tomorrow, you're probably looking at a bunch of significant capital requests for hardware, probably several months of lead times, and by the time it all happens, that ship has long sailed. We were literally kind of scaling up in terms of port utilization and down almost intraday at times, so a massive benefit.
You almost took what I was about to ask you, Rich, was, how do we actually get through that process? Traditionally, all of us kind of from big organizations, we go through very fun business casing, financial investment, change management, and the likes. Like, how did you kind of get around, or not get around, but how did you adapt to be able to do this in the environment and kind of get that through, especially dipping your toe in? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of organizations have that same struggle of how do I make this change quickly, but securely with that financial view.
Yeah, I think the one thing that 2020 has shown us more than anything is that certainty is anything but. The only certainty is uncertainty. And for us, the beauty of a CX1, a cloud-based solution, is that it does give you that surety around scalability, but also surety around cost, because it's not as if, as I said, you're suddenly going to ask for another 50 agents and that's going to require a bunch more servers in a comms room somewhere that are going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a very clear view on, well, clearly it's going to increase your licensing costs in total, but you know exactly what that is. And then once you're through it, then you can scale it back down again. So in an unsure world, having surety around the ability to scale up and down and surety around the pricing for us is critical, because we're no different to any business. We have a responsibility to our shareholders, and that means from a profitability perspective, we obviously focus on our revenues, but we also need to manage our costs appropriately as well. So being able to flex that way and knowing exactly what that means from a cost perspective has been critical for us.
Slade, has that been a similar change that's undergone at iSelect, or were you guys almost being sort of newer in the scene than a few of our organizations kind of already built around that rapid kind of investment models?
In some areas, yes, and in some areas, no. I think with the engagement platform, we're on Genesis Pure Connect. The main reason, the last time we did an upgrade was actually in mid 2019, or just after mid 2019. And what's really interesting in our environment is we're heavily reliant on outbound calls and that outbound dialer. So I think Cam will probably sort of have a similar experience, is that cloud has moved so fast that I think if I was making the decision for an upgrade today, I'd be looking at a completely different product set. But just at that period in time, my requirements were the dialer was that important that it's like I say, it's like plumbing, and it just needs to work and just needs to work effectively. And so that was really for us number 1, 2, and 3 in making the choice that we did at that time. What we have done though is, when you look at every other service environment, that we have been migrating fairly rapidly to the cloud. And even other kind of pure cloud environments, or that VMC style cloud environment, just to give us that flexibility. And we did have the benefits of that. One of our last major upgrades was in January, luckily last year, and that then enabled the work from home environment for us to scale up very quickly and achieve many of the benefits that Cam and Rich have spoken about. Not all of them, because we still have this hybrid environment at the moment. But certainly, it's, you know, from a progression forward, it's an area that we keep focused on. Some of the complexity just in an older environment is then how you match your various customer experience tools. Mostly for us, that sits in the data side within those new environments. So, for example, we have machine learning tools that will sort phone calls in a particular way for our purposes, or route a call to a particular agent based on their needs, or even treat people differently based on the information that they've entered into our website in terms of what they'll see on the next page or the next form. And so when you're doing those sorts of things, the orchestration of your web with your engagement platforms and then your machine learning platforms that have got their own set of heuristics, that all becomes, if you like, it's a complex cobweb of connections. And the difficulty as you have a more developed environment is just making change with all that in mind.
Certainly sounds like a massive conductor. You know, I can imagine that massive sympathy going behind it. It feels like to me, from what you just described there as well, that really empowers your actual contact center agents with more information to allow them to have that personal conversation, kind of almost shortcut some of that rapport building, because you are getting such rich insights from all those pieces coming together. Is that how it kind of plays out with iSelect?
I think it does, yeah. I think, you know, there's levels of decisioning and then information that we have from a team leader level up to the guys that are managing the call center proper. And that is something that we have members of our team looking at on a daily basis to get that mix right. I think if I look at it and I take a step back to say, well, where is service, or in our case, comparison going? My view is it's, you know, the things that we're doing now are very much around that one-to-one engagement and ensuring that both from a customer experience as well as a consultant experience, that we're matching them in the right way. But we're still in an environment where if you're doing a comparison in 2021, most of the time you're going to a website, you're entering a certain needs, you're doing things that most of us as consumers actually don't really want to do. And I think the big change when we look at automation in our area is that, you know, by the middle of the decade, the comparison process will increasingly move away from the browser. So we're looking at automation, considering things like the consumer data right and open data, where if we can understand the needs of a customer who signs up to our customer account, they shouldn't have to go to the website for us to know that there's a better deal for them. And so that sort of engagement and that sort of longer term customer relationship is, I think, where the market's going. And whether that be for us or anybody else that's, you know, dealing in, you know, these sorts of services that make our homes run, whether it be your insurances or your broadband or, you know, your electricity, you know, they're complex products. And using data, if we know that there's a better deal, we should be able to let you know about it without you going to a website or necessarily calling a number first.
Yeah, awesome work. I mean, that kind of level of personalization really starts to engage the people, make them feel like they're actually understood and trusted, and really put that value into that transaction, which is awesome work. I'm going to now ask pretty much the same question to each of you. I am going to start with Cam first, because you're in the top corner of my screen. I don't know what you like on each of yours, but, you know, what are the developments now that we're starting to see? What's the kind of things that are coming up now that are really going to start driving not only that employee engagement, but how we build that omni agent and the kind of stuff that we need to do to really provide that cool, seamless CX to our customers?
Yeah, there's probably two interesting ones I want to highlight that we're seeing, and it goes a little bit to what Slade was talking about, which is, you know, why should we make people go to the effort of trying to, you know, answer lots of questions if when we, you know, apply advanced technologies, we can actually answer those questions in an automated way. And that extends to, you know, something as basic as contact center quality assurance. you know, every contact center does this. They check, you know, are agents communicating effectively? Are they building rapport, actively listening, and so on and so forth. But with developments in machine learning technology, we've been able to productize a bunch of models that can actually assess those sorts of behavioral characteristics on every single call that takes place, and it gives a much more objective view into somebody's kind of performance around behavioral and quality metrics. We call it Enlighten, and you know, it's something that we've seen make a really, really big difference in a lot of contact centers. So very excited that that's coming around in Australia. Looking forward to rolling that out. The other one that we're seeing, of course, is that you know, COVID has accelerated a sort of divergence or diversification of the workforce. You've got people in a lot of different locations. They're servicing customers via many, many different channels. You know, increasingly we're introducing a blended workforce of virtual agents as well as you know, human agents. And so with this kind of very mixed workforce, we're seeing a lot more, you know, demand on how to effectively engage with that workforce to help ensure that people are able to work at the optimal times to service customer inquiries, even when that demand is unpredictable, and give people the power to manage their kind of work-life balance by swapping shifts with other people and applying for time off where, you know, the forecasts tell us there's going to be available dips in call volumes, and do all of that through a mobile app, and sort of do a lot of automation behind the scenes to help people manage their work experience. So that CX1 engagement manager that I'm talking about, I think, you know, is a cool key to helping to drive that you know, flexibility as the workforce kind of fragments.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important thing being able to manage your life. It's a very different circumstance now, being able to go do the school run when needed, being able to change your shift on the fly. It's really cool things of what companies are starting to look at and do, and really support our employees. Richard, for yourself, you know, with Business Australia, what's kind of the things that you guys are watching and monitoring for the same space, like things that are going to help you keep your employees engaged and moving as we go forward?
Yeah, look, I think I would echo Cam's points around flexible working arrangements, flexibility in location, flexibility in shift patterns. That all makes a lot of sense. And I think, ironically, or paradoxically even, we've all probably never worked as hard as we have in the last 12 months, but we've probably had a better work-life balance at the same time, which is quite an unusual thing to achieve. I think the thing we're focusing on most, I think, to where Slade was going at the end of what he said most recently, is we'd like to try and get to a position where we can help answer a business owner's question before they ask it, or in fact, actual fact, help them understand something they didn't know they needed to know would be the next step, if you like, up the experience ladder for us. And that's very much about the integration of data and understanding, but also, you know, the edges of machine learning there. So we're not there yet, but that's absolutely where we'd like to get to.
Excellent. Richard, do you have anything you want to add? Oh, sorry, not Richard, Rich now. Did you want to add to kind of...
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I ask this question when I'm presenting to people pretty regularly, which is, you know, put your hand up if you've recently phoned a contact center because you wanted to. And not many people put their hands up, right? You phone a contact center because you have a problem and you need resolution to it. So resolution is the most important thing. That said, we do get a few people who call us just for a chat, I think, but they're definitely an exception to the norm. So the job, therefore, is about resolution. And if you can provide that resolution without the need for them to contact you, so that you're creating space for those customers who really do need that human support, and I do believe that will be around forever. I honestly believe that. That's obviously a great destination to aim towards. In my view, and this is going to be a major focus for us in 2021, it's how do you work really effectively with your product teams, your technology teams, and your digital teams in a truly cross-company approach, as opposed to in a siloed approach, which I've seen happen in many organizations. Because consumers don't work in silos, they work this way. So we've spent a lot of time really building the relationships with tech, product, and our digital guys to ensure that we're working collaboratively on one end game, which is about providing a better experience to our our subscribers in 9. And I would just add to it, in our experience, there's nobody better than your agents to tell you what's really going on, because they're the ones that are doing it intraday. 50, 60 times in a day, they're speaking to our subscribers. So we do what we can to try and involve them in the design, because frankly, they know it better than we do.
Yeah, exactly right. That whole voice of agent, voice of customer all together gives us that true end-to-end picture, and really running across the service mechanism, not the silos of our business, but actually the services we provide to our customers. I think we're probably getting towards the end of our time, unfortunately. I'd like to thank all our panelists. Now, as this is a pre-recorded session, we didn't have time for Q&A within the session, but we will be able to catch a Q&A through the platform that we're running within CCW Disrupt. So I'm sure to say for everyone here, if we get a bunch of questions from participants, we can send them through to each of you and get responses back. But thank you very much for your time today. We hope everyone who is watching this stream enjoyed it. There's some really cool, crazy stories from very different perspectives in here, which is great. And thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.